Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission, as always, is to take your sources, articles, notes, research, and really boil them down, pull out the crucial knowledge, the key insights. We want to turn that mountain of information into something clear, a path for you to be truly well-informed.
Exactly.
So today we're diving deep into some broad but definitely interconnected themes. We're talking about power, certain tendencies in governance that sources are highlighting, and also the different kinds of resistance popping up from, local communities right up to international diplomacy.
And that interconnectedness is key, really, because we'll look at how events that seem totally separate, like, say, local law enforcement actions, big international summits, even political spats on social media, how they can actually reveal these deeper patterns.
Right. Patterns about how things are being governed, the global political landscape.
Yeah. And understanding those connections, seeing those threads, that's vital if you want to be genuinely informed in, well, let's face it, a pretty complex world. It's about getting past the headlines.
Definitely. Moving beyond just the daily noise to see the underlying forces and maybe how they affect you. Okay, so let's start close to home. We're looking at incidents where actions by government agencies, specifically ICE in these sources, are being perceived by some people as having characteristics you might associate with, well, different kinds of governance systems.
Yeah, the sources describe actions that reportedly create fear, disruption, and frankly, suffering in communities across the U.S.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with stories that, as described, feel less like everyday America and maybe more like something out of a chilling report from somewhere else. First stop is Norwalk, Connecticut. Sources describe a scene over a recent weekend. 12 masked armed agents, reportedly in unmarked cars, descended on a neighborhood.
12 agents, masked, unmarked cars.
Yeah.
It's quite a presence.
It is. They reportedly surrounded a red pickup truck. Inside was a man named Ricardo Chavez and his brother. Sources say the agents demanded paperwork immediately, but before any could apparently be shown, they reportedly smashed the truck's windshields.
Smash the windows first.
That's what the sources indicate. When Ricardo reportedly tried to run, maybe understandably, given the situation, agents pursued him. Sources say he was tased, physically subdued, beaten according to some accounts, and then shoved, bleeding, into one of these unmarked cars.
Wow.
And the sources emphasize this was a working guy. His daughter, who's actually a psychology student at UConn, apparently rushed over with his documents.
Did they look at them?
Sources say they were ignored. The agents reportedly left the wrecked truck right there in the street for the daughter to deal with.
That's unbelievable. The aftermath must have been something.
It was. Later that night, sources report hundreds gathered outside the police station. Neighbors, clergy, even the mayor showed up. And they reportedly described what happened as terrorism. Not from outside, but from, and this is a quote from the sources, their own government.
Terrorism. That's an incredibly strong word to use about your own government's actions. It really speaks volumes about the psychological impact, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
I mean, when you have masked agents armed in unmarked vehicles, using force like that, especially when identification and process seem unclear, it obviously goes way beyond the person directly involved.
It creates fear in the whole community.
Exactly. It fosters this profound sense of apprehension, this vulnerability. People start thinking, could that happen to me? Am I safe even if I've done nothing wrong?
Right.
And that perceived overreach, particularly when it lacks transparency, that directly chips away at public trust. It raises these fundamental questions about government legitimacy, about accountability. It sort of subtly rewrites the social contract in people's minds.
And these accounts, they're not just one-offs, are they? You mentioned Garden Grove, California.
Yeah, another example from the sources. Sunday morning, 11 a.m., a car wash. Should be totally routine.
But it wasn't.
No. Sources describe multiple masked agents, again, unmarked cars, surrounding and physically subduing an unarmed man who reportedly wasn't resisting.
In public.
At a car wash.
Yeah.
In public. Bystanders were apparently shouting things like, "He's not doing anything, leave him alone."
And there was video.
Reportedly. And you could apparently hear crying in the background. Think about the trauma for people forced to watch that.
Yeah, just witnessing that kind of thing unfold.
It's immediate, it's raw. And when it happens in broad daylight, in a place you consider safe, it just shatters that community's sense of security.
It makes you feel unsafe anywhere.
It can, yeah. It creates this palpable fear, like just going about your day could put you in that situation. And that directly hits the community's trust in law enforcement. It can foster this deep caution that lasts for years.
Okay, let's just slightly. Dover, Arkansas, what do the sources say happened there?
This one involved reported profiling. Scene is families enjoying a day by the river. Pretty normal stuff.
Okay.
Then ICE agents reportedly arrive. But instead of, checking everyone or observing, they reportedly went directly to families identified as Latino.
Just the Latino families.
That's what sources say, demanding papers, documentation. Meanwhile, other families nearby, apparently not Latino, were left alone.
And were the people they targeted undocumented?
Actually, no. In this case, sources say everyone in the targeted group turned out to be fully documented.
So they had their papers.
They did. But sources emphasized the humiliation they endured before ICE reportedly had no choice but to let them go. It really raises questions about why they were singled out.
Right. It feeds into that argument that maybe this isn't just about legitimate law enforcement.
Exactly. When agents reportedly target people based on ethnicity, even when those people are documented, it sends a message, doesn't it? That certain groups are just inherently suspicious.
Regardless of their actual status.
Precisely. And that, as the sources contend, raises critical questions about equity, about impartial justice, about basic civil liberties for everyone, no matter their background. It points to a perceived bias that challenges core principles.
Okay, from Arkansas to San Bernardino, California. This one sounds particularly alarming based on the sources.
Yeah, this involved a family just going about their day. Suddenly, unmarked cars reportedly boxed them in. No warning.
Just like that.
Just like that. Men in masks, guns drawn, reportedly demanding they open their doors.
Terrifying.
Understandably, the family was reportedly distressed, stayed inside. When they didn't comply immediately, the agents reportedly smashed their car windows.
Smash the windows.
Yes. And then the father, reportedly in a panic, who wouldn't be, faced with unidentified armed men, tried to drive away.
Seems like a natural reaction in that state.
Sources frame it that way. But then the agents reportedly opened fire, discharged firearms into the car.
Into the car with the family inside.
Yes. Miraculously, no one was killed, though an 18-year-old was in the front seat.
What was the official story?
Afterwards, Homeland Security reportedly claimed the driver tried to run down officers.
But there was video.
There was, and sources say the video did not support that claim. Instead, it reportedly showed a family under siege by government agents who, crucially, sources say never identified themselves.
So the official narrative potentially didn't match the evidence.
That's what the sources suggest. And this incident highlights what's perceived as alarming, potentially disproportionate force, especially given the alleged lack of identification. That discrepancy between the official claim and the video, it raises serious questions about accountability, transparency.
It suggests a potential willingness to, spin the story?
Or misrepresent events, as some sources argue. And that deeply undermines public trust. If citizens feel agents can act with alleged impunity and the official story might not be accurate, what does that mean for citizen protection? It's a profound question.
Let's go to Toombs County, Georgia. This involves a young person.
Yes, a teenager named Roberto, second day of school, driving to class after dropping his mom at work.
Okay.
He's described as a high school soccer star, a cross-country runner, helped his school win its first state championship, a contributing member of the community.
What happened?
Police reportedly pulled him over for a stop sign violation, a minor traffic stop.
And then ICE got involved.
ICE was reportedly notified. And right there, sources say, in front of his classmates, Roberto was handcuffed, arrested, taken away.
Just like that, for a stop sign.
That's the reported sequence. And this is a young man who, sources indicate, has lived in Georgia since he was 4. His parents are asylum seekers.
So he grew up there.
Essentially, yes. And now, instead of finishing high school, he's reportedly in detention. His family's devastated, siblings miss their brother. The community's left asking, why? What's the rationale here?
It brings up that question of proportionality again.
Absolutely. The impact on young lives, on families, on communities, it's profound. When you take a promising kid like Roberto, integrate it into his community and remove him over a minor infraction, you have to ask about the wisdom, the long-term social costs.
Disrupting education, separating families.
It's ripples of apprehension, even for documented residents.
Yeah.
It's a policy approach that, as described, inherently disrupts the social fabric.
And it's not just teenagers or adults, is it? The sources mention children, even toddlers.
Yeah, this is incredibly disturbing. ICE has reportedly been detaining very young children. Sources mention 2 Canadian kids, both under 4 years old.
Under 4 detained.
Held for over a month, reportedly. One for 51 days.
51 days for a toddler.
And these aren't, child-friendly environments.
Yep.
Sources describe them as holding facilities. There were reports of babies losing weight, mothers allegedly denied formula, guards reportedly taking away kids' toys.
Oh my God.
You even hear accounts cited in the sources of kids saying things like, "I don't want to die here."
That's horrific.
Some sources explicitly describe it as psychological torture on children. It highlights an extreme human cost.
It makes you question the priorities, doesn't it?
Deeply. When a system detains infants and toddlers to this extent, it raises profound ethical and moral questions about the priorities of the agencies involved. Critics argue it suggests a dehumanizing approach where child welfare seems secondary to enforcement goals. That's a massive implication for any society that values its children.
And the key takeaway from the sources seems to be that these aren't just scattered, unfortunate incidents.
No, not at all. The sources are very clear. This is presented as part of a coordinated, federally funded campaign.
Coordinated, federally funded.
Yes. And there are even reported plans on the table to build 1,000 detention centers across the United States. 1,000.
1,000 new detention centers. That scale is staggering. It immediately makes you ask.
Who profits?
Exactly.
And the sources name them: private prison companies, political allies, contractors who see dollar signs in human suffering.
So there's a powerful economic incentive driving this.
That's the argument presented. When detention becomes a profitable business, it can create this perverse incentive to maintain or even expand the very conditions that require detention, rather than seeking humane or effective alternatives.
Yeah.
The profit motive itself potentially fuels the suffering.
And the people being targeted, the sources draw a connection there too.
Yes, they emphasize these are the same people who keep our farms running, who pick our food, who build our homes, who care for our kids, who staff our hospitals.
Essential members of the community, often doing vital work.
Precisely. So the argument presented is that the raids don't make America stronger. They tear at the very fabric of our communities. It's framed as a dismantling process happening from within.
Okay, so that's the picture painted on the domestic front regarding these specific actions. Now let's broaden the lens. We need to shift focus to what the sources describe as challenges to democratic norms and processes, both here in the U.S. and abroad, reportedly coming from certain political figures.
Right, because the shadow of these authoritarian-style tendencies, as sources frame them, isn't just about physical enforcement. It's also about potentially undermining the foundations of how we govern ourselves.
This is where it gets, well, really interesting, potentially quite concerning depending on your perspective. Let's start with reported efforts to influence elections here at home. Specifically, comments and actions by Donald Trump regarding mail-in voting, reportedly after a meeting with Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, the sources highlight a really striking detail from that interaction. Putin reportedly told Trump, essentially, your election system is rigged against you because of mail-in voting. You actually won in 2020. The ballots stole it.
And Trump reportedly just accepted that.
Swallowed it whole, is how one source puts it. And immediately, reportedly, launched a campaign to eliminate mail-in voting and dismantle voting machines.
Taking advice on running American elections directly from Vladimir Putin, according to these sources.
That's the explicit link the sources draw. And it's a point of, obviously, significant concern for many observers. It suggests a reported willingness to internalize and act on narratives that seem designed, frankly, to destabilize democratic processes. That kind of perceived influence is a major discussion point regarding electoral integrity.
And the sources detail further proposals from Trump.
Yes. He reportedly suggested the National Guard should take control of ballot counting.
The National Guard counting ballots. That sounds like federalizing elections.
That's how analysts interpret it, potentially stripping states of their traditional power. And he was reportedly quite blunt about the motive, quoted saying, if you have mail-in voting, you're not going to have many Democrats get elected.
Saying the quiet part out loud, as the phrase goes.
Sources noted it that way. They also correct his reported false claim that the U.S. is the only country using mail-in voting, pointing out dozens of democracies rely on them.
And he promised an executive order for honesty.
Yes, which critics widely interpreted as code for actions that could rig elections in his favor. The core concern here, as highlighted in the sources, isn't just the specific proposals. It's the repeated, reported undermining of public faith in the democratic process itself.
Keep chipping away at trust.
Exactly. When a major political figure constantly pushes disputed claims about election integrity, discusses methods to change voting mechanics, it fosters widespread distrust. Sources characterize it as desperation, maybe an attempt to pre-rig 2026. It normalizes the idea that elections are only legitimate if your side wins, which is corrosive.
Okay, now let's pivot to Ukraine. Reported comments by Trump during President Zelensky's visit to Washington about Ukrainian elections and territory.
Right. In the Oval Office, sources report Trump questioning Zelensky about not holding elections during wartime. He reportedly said something like, "So, you mean if we happen to be in a war with somebody, no more elections?" Oh, understood. Yes. Mockingly is how it was perceived.
But Ukraine's constitution actually forbids wartime elections, doesn't it?
It does, as sources point out, and that's not unusual. Many countries do that for stability, security, logistics, fair representation reasons during an existential fight.
So for Trump to question that,
especially given his own reported comments about U.S. elections, analysts interpreted it as potentially laying the groundwork for his own authoritarian fantasy, openly floating the idea of suspending U.S. elections using war as a pretext. It's seen as dangerous rhetoric.
And then there was the comment about territory?
Yeah. During the same appearance, he was reportedly asked if Zelensky could end the war by just surrendering Ukrainian territory to Russia.
And his response?
Reportedly. Yeah, I think that's true. Essentially, as sources summarize it, just hand over pieces of Ukraine to Putin and problem solved.
Wow. That must have been difficult for Zelensky to hear.
Sources described it as a slap in the face to him and every Ukrainian fighting for survival. To suggest a sovereign nation should just cede land to an invader, especially coming from a former U.S. president.
The implications are huge.
Profound. It undermines international law, potentially emboldens aggressors, signals a massive shift away from principles of self-determination. It suggests a transactional view of global conflict, which is deeply concerning for allies. And what's fascinating here, connecting back, is how these reported domestic attempts to reshape democracy seem to link up with a very distinct foreign policy approach, especially regarding Ukraine.
Right, it's not happening in a vacuum. The words matter on the global stage. Absolutely. So let's dig deeper into that Trump's perceived approach to the Russia-Ukraine war, the reported diplomatic missteps, the contradictions, and what seems like an alignment with Putin's narrative, according to these sources.
The sources describe Trump's meeting with Putin as him essentially rolling out the red carpet, reportedly dropping preconditions, ignoring sanctions, and coming out sounding, as one analyst put it, like Putin's hype man.
Not exactly a confrontational stance.
Far from it, based on these accounts. And the reported consequences were immediate and visual.
Tanks.
Yeah. This disturbing image described in the sources. Russian forces literally mocking that so-called deal by strapping American flags to their tanks while shelling Ukrainian positions, right alongside Russian flags.
That's incredibly blatant propaganda.
It is. And the message it sends, according to sources, is that Russia is aligned with America, specifically Trump's America. They called it despicable and grotesque.
It plays right into the enemy's narrative.
Completely. It reinforces that perception of a U.S. president unwilling to strongly challenge an aggressor, eroding international trust, especially among allies who rely on American leadership. It creates this image of tacit approval, which is incredibly damaging.
And this reportedly fit a pattern of unfulfilled promises from Trump regarding Putin.
Yes. Sources mention Trump claiming Putin really would like to do something else, promising very positive moves soon, like over 1,000 Ukrainian prisoners being released.
Did that happen?
The sources say the reality was very different. A lot of hype, very little follow-through, and Ukraine still under fire. No mass prisoner release materialized as described.
So a disconnect between the rhetoric and the reality on the ground.
A significant one. It highlights this pattern of unmet promises and what's perceived as either naivete or maybe deliberate misrepresentation of Putin's actual intentions. It suggests a fundamental misunderstanding or ignoring of Putin's strategic goals, which aren't seen as being about goodwill concessions.
Which connects to what sources call Trump's bizarre admiration for Putin.
Right. He reportedly talks about Putin like he's some kind of business partner, someone you can just strike a deal with.
Despite Putin being widely seen as a brutal dictator who doubled down after failing to take Ukraine quickly.
Exactly. Trump reportedly acts like Putin is just waiting for the right moment to hand over concessions out of the goodness of his heart.
Which sounds unrealistic.
Sources characterize it as wishful thinking, bordering on delusion, a fundamental misunderstanding of Putin's geopolitical drivers' power projection, restoring Russian influence. Viewing him like a business partner misses the core motivations, making effective diplomacy almost impossible.
And then there's the whole ceasefire issue, which seems contradictory based on the sources.
Highly contradictory. In that Oval Office meeting with Zelensky and European leaders, Trump reportedly said he doesn't think a ceasefire is important anymore.
He said what?
Quote, I don't think you need a ceasefire. If you look at the 6 deals I settled this year, they were all at war. I didn't do any ceasefires.
6 deals he settled. Which ones?
That's the thing. Sources say there's no record of him settling 6 major conflicts that year without ceasefires. He reportedly mentioned India, Pakistan, Rwanda, Congo, places where his direct involvement in settling wars isn't widely documented. It's described as a fantasy world claim.
But beyond the accuracy, dismissing ceasefires.
Is seen as reckless and callous. A ceasefire means stopping the bombs, the killing, the bloodshed, even temporarily. To reportedly say it's unnecessary in a brutal war like Ukraine's shows a disregard for the immediate human cost.
And wasn't this a flip-flop? Didn't he say something different before meeting Putin in Alaska?
That's the stark contradiction sources highlight. Before that meeting, he reportedly promised that if he couldn't secure a ceasefire with Putin, there would be serious consequences. Now suddenly, ceasefires aren't important. It's a major shift.
How did European leaders react to all this, particularly after the Putin meeting?
With extreme alarm, according to the sources. They were reportedly so alarmed that they literally dropped everything, jet skiing, vacations, whatever, and flew to Washington for emergency damage control.
Wow. That signals real panic, doesn't it?
It absolutely underscores the perceived urgency and severity of the threat to European security they saw in Trump's stance. It wasn't just rhetoric to them. It was potentially impacting their nation's safety, a stark indicator of their apprehension.
And what was their strategy when they got to D.C.?
Pragmatic,
Yeah.
if a little undignified, as sources describe it. Flatter him. Basically, compliment the guy until he agrees with you.
Seriously, flattery as a diplomatic strategy.
That's how it's depicted. Sources cite the example of Finland's president awkwardly waving to get Trump's attention, only for Trump to reportedly compliment his looks instead of engaging substantively at first.
It paints a picture of very transactional, ego-driven interactions.
It does. It forces allied leaders into these positions of managing an individual's ego over discussing policy, just to protect their core national interests. It reduces serious diplomacy to performance art, some argue.
And the press conference after that Alaska meeting with Putin, how did that go over?
Sources described it as tense, awkward, and frankly humiliating. Even a Fox News reporter apparently admitted Putin steamrolled Trump.
Ouch. Even Fox News.
Yeah. And while the White House tried to spin it with a tough black and white photo, candid shots reportedly told a different story. Putin looking smug, Trump looking queasy.
So the curated image versus the perceived reality again.
Exactly. It highlighted the stark difference between Trump's self-promoted image as a master negotiator and the perceived reality of that particular engagement. It showed him seemingly outmaneuvered, which has huge implications for international leverage and respect.
So, okay, we've seen these challenges, these perceived authoritarian tendencies, the diplomatic issues. What does this all mean for you listening? It means that, importantly, sources also highlight powerful examples of resistance, people pushing back.
Right. It's not a one-sided story. We're seeing responses from high-level politics down to grassroots efforts. It shows people aren't just passively accepting things.
Let's start with that community defiance against the perceived icy actions. We heard about Norwalk, but there were others.
Yes. Sources mention Washington, D.C.'s Mount Pleasant neighborhood. Residents put up anti-ice signs. Icy agents were reportedly caught on camera tearing them down.
And the residents
immediately put them back up. Sources call it a quiet but powerful act of defiance. Simple, visible resistance.
And back in Norwalk, those hundreds gathering outside the police station.
Calling the raids terrorism. That collective action, that visible dissent, even when facing perceived intimidation. It's a vital form of democratic expression, isn't it?
It really is. It reminds authorities that people have agency.
Exactly. It shows collective power still resides with the people when they choose to use it together. It reinforces community bonds and challenges that sense of governmental overreach.
Now let's look at leadership resistance. President Zelensky. Sources highlight his steadfastness.
Absolutely. His messaging is described as direct, uncompromising, even under incredible pressure. Take the White House visit. Trump's team reportedly insisted he wear a suit.
And he didn't.
Nope.
Yeah.
Showed up in his now iconic olive green t-shirt. His explanation, reportedly, he's a wartime president, not there to play dress-up or photo ops.
That sends a clear message.
A powerful one. Sources frame it as a refusal to bend the knee to Trump, just like he refuses to bend the knee to Putin. It's defiance, authenticity, substance over spectacle. It amplifies his message of resolve.
And his words were just as direct.
Reportedly, yes. He apparently gave a blunt message to retired General Keith Kellogg, a U.S. envoy whose sources say Trump sidelined for a real estate buddy, Steve Witkoff.
What did Zelensky say?
Point blank, according to sources. Ukraine is not giving up Donbass. It's not ceding territory. There will be no land for peace deal.
No ambiguity there.
None. And he reportedly added, quite fiery,
Yeah?
if you think we're going to give Putin chunks of Ukraine, you're idiots.
Wow. Calling a U.S. envoy an idiot.
It underscores the depth of Ukraine's resolve, right? It's an uncompromising message on sovereignty. Our survival isn't a bargaining chip. It's a powerful assertion of self-determination against immense pressure.
And during that difficult Oval Office press conference, how did he handle himself?
With remarkable poise, sources say. Faced with offensive questions, he reportedly kept bringing it back to the reality for Ukrainians. The daily missile strikes, the casualties, a toddler killed that morning. He spoke of his people's resilience.
While Trump was reportedly focused elsewhere,
Sources contrast Zelensky's focus with Trump whining about his media coverage, rambling about golf tournaments.
that contrast really illustrates different approaches to leadership under pressure.
Immensely. Zelensky's focus in dignity versus perceived self-absorption and distraction. It highlights true leadership versus something else.
Let's talk about the European leaders pushing back in that same Oval Office meeting. They didn't just flatter, did they?
No, they also made clear demands, presented a unified front against Trump's perceived conciliatory approach. Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz reportedly pushed back hard.
What did he say?
He stated there would be no negotiations until Russia agrees to a ceasefire. Full stop. And sources say every leader in that room made it clear. Ukraine is ready to agree to stop fighting, but it has to be Russia that stops killing civilians.
Putting the onus squarely on Russia.
Exactly. And there were specific demands, too. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen reportedly demanded the return of the 40,000 Ukrainian children kidnapped by Russia, calling it non-negotiable.
40,000 children. That's a staggering number.
It is. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni was reportedly unequivocal. We are on the side of Ukraine. The UK's Keir Starmer stressed the entire security of Europe is at stake.
So, a united front.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And even Finland's President Stubb, the one Trump reportedly forgot, gave a history lesson. Reminded Trump about Finland's long border with Russia, their own history fighting them in the Winter War.
What was his message?
Simple and stark. If Russia isn't stopped in Ukraine, they'll keep going.
That's a powerful display of Allied solidarity.
Absolutely. A clear counter-narrative to any perceived appeasement. It showed Europe standing shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine, presenting a formidable united front and reinforcing those core principles.
Okay, now for a different kind of resistance, perhaps. California Governor Gavin Newsom. Sources analyze his strategy as basically turning Trump's own playbook back on him.
Kind of, yeah. The analysis is that while Trump punches at everybody, Newsom punches back in his exact style, but with sharper wit and a whole lot more self-awareness.
How so? Give us some examples from the sources.
Okay, so Newsom reportedly uses nicknames like Donald Tiny Hands, mocks Trump's Bella Bah social media posts, uses insults like beta. He signs off posts with sarcastic acronyms like GCN. Sources call it trolling with precision.
Trolling is a political strategy.
The analysis suggests it's about using humor to expose perceived weakness, highlight insecurities, and break the illusion of dominance that Trump tries to project.
And the theory is that ridicule is particularly effective.
Sources note that nothing enrages Trump and his fans more than someone laughing at them. So humor becomes a way to disarm, to shift the power dynamic.
What are some specific examples the sources cite?
Well, when Trump was reportedly fear-mongering about D.C. crime with dramatic images, Newsom posted a picture of Fox host Pete Hegseth on a mall scooter, captioning it, "Troops leading patrol at the food court."
Ouch. And pointed out crime was actually down.
Yeah, reportedly down 30% in D.C. at the time. Then there's Trump's reported use of fake AI images, making himself look muscular, putting MAGA hats on celebrities like Taylor Swift. Newsom reportedly parodied that with his own AI memes himself, hanging out with Hulk Hogan, Kid Rock, Tucker Carlson, and Trump, dressed as the Pope. Just leaning into the absurdity.
He also reportedly gave J.D. Vance a nickname.
Just Dance Vance, yeah. Mocking his reported eyeliner use and stiff clapping, but then tying it directly to the very real issue of gerrymandering in Ohio. So, humor linked to substance.
And the high school photos.
Yeah, side-by-side photos emerge. Newsom voted most stylish. Don Jr., well, not. Newsom reportedly jabbed. Tough choice. One now leads the world's fourth largest economy. The other sells cell phones. Again, sharp and personal, mirroring a style often used against others.
But it's not just trolling, is it? Sources say he connects it to real action.
Crucially, yes. California filed a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit against the Trump administration. They want to know if Trump or Kristi Noem sent masked federal agents to intimidate lawmakers at a redistricting event.
Okay, that's serious.
Exactly. As one source puts it, that's not trolling, that's serious accountability mixed with humor.
So the humor disarms, but also redirects attention.
Precisely. Back to substantive issues like crime stats, gerrymandering, voting rights, potential abuse of power. Newsom's described as building a brand of resistance that's funny, sharp, and relatable in the social media age. It shows serious points can land effectively using modern communication styles.
How did outlets like Fox News react, according to the sources?
Predictably, perhaps. Hosts reportedly called Newsom's posts childish and disrespectful.
And Newsom's response?
He reportedly gave them Trump-style nicknames back, like Bird Brain Trey Gallagher and Fox Edit the Tapes News, calling their shows boring snooze fests.
He really leaned into it.
He did. And in doing so, sources argue he effectively shifted the dynamic. After decades of Fox being on offense, Newsom put them on the defensive, using their own tactics against them. It changed the flow of the debate. So if we connect all these threads, the domestic enforcement issues, the challenges to democracy, the foreign policy friction, the various forms of resistance, how does this play out in our own political landscape, particularly thinking about major elections like the midterms?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? How does this tension translate into votes? Let's look at Donald Trump's national approval ratings, as cited in the sources.
They're reportedly showing a net negative, around 38%, across just about every single demographic.
Which, as analysts point out, is not a good number if your party is trying to hold on to tight Senate seats, especially in states that have been leaning red recently.
Right. That widespread net negative for a figurehead of the party is a significant headwind. It means a large chunk of the electorate is dissatisfied, making it tough for candidates closely tied to him, especially in competitive races. You can create these cracks in red states where seats thought safe might become vulnerable.
Let's use Ohio as an example. It's often seen as a bellwether, leaned red recently. But the sources suggest when Ohioans are asked about the economy, healthcare, Congress, Republicans there are facing real headwinds.
Yeah, they're described as not just struggling, they're drowning in terms of public approval on those core issues. The reported frustration isn't subtle.
And this highlights that disconnect we talked about between political rhetoric and lived reality. Take Senator Bernie Moreno in Ohio. He's reportedly claimed, "This country is hotter than it's ever been," asserting there's no inflation, that everything is amazing.
That rhetoric just clashes so hard with what many people report experiencing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
For the family in Youngstown trying to afford groceries, or the senior citizen in Toledo who just lost her health care, or the workers in Dayton watching another factory shut down. Hearing that everything is hot and amazing doesn't feel like reality. It creates pain, not heat.
It sounds completely out of touch.
That's how it's perceived. And that disconnect fuels dissatisfaction. It makes voters question the credibility of politicians making those claims and look for alternatives.
And people are speaking out. Teachers, parents on SNN.
Yes, and reportedly feeling ignored when they contact their senators, like Moreno or John Huston. That feeling of being unheard is what drives people to look for change.
Which brings us to Democrat Sherrod Brown in Ohio. How is he positioning himself, according to sources?
He's been there for years, built a brand as a fighter for workers. Sources say he's expressing frustration with politicians playing games with people's lives. His argument: the system has always been rigged, but it's gotten worse.
And he connects that to specific issues.
Directly. Healthcare cuts threatening nearly 500,000 Ohioans, potential rural hospital closures, rising drug prices, slashed veterans benefits. He calls it a recipe for a full-blown backlash.
What's his core message framing?
It's reportedly, this isn't about left versus right, it's about whose side you're on. Are you on the side of billionaires, corporations, special interests, or working families, seniors, everyday folks? That kind of framing often cuts through partisan divides, doesn't it? It focuses on economic fairness, common struggles. It resonates when people feel squeezed financially. It moves beyond labels to fundamental alignment.
And interestingly, sources note that Republicans like Moreno actually tried to copy Brown's man of the people style.
They reportedly tried, yes, pretending to be champions of the working class. But sources argue that when it came time to govern, the mask slipped, and they sided with corporate interests instead.
A bait and switch, as sources put it.
Exactly. And reportedly, Ohioans are starting to notice.
So what are the stakes if Democrats could flip seats like this in states like Ohio?
The stakes are huge. It's not just symbolic. It genuinely changes the map in Washington.
How so?
It makes it harder for Republicans to block legislation on things people care about, and easier for policies like affordable health care, fair wages, worker protections to actually get traction, maybe even become law. It directly impacts the legislative agenda and people's lives.
But it's still an uphill battle in a state like Ohio.
Oh, absolutely. Sources acknowledge this fight is uphill. Ohio is still a tough state. But the key insight is that people vote based on their wallets. When daily costs bite, partisan labels might matter less than whether you feel someone is listening and addressing your reality.
And this isn't just Ohio.
No, the sources suggest this restlessness is appearing elsewhere. Across the country, in other states we've long thought of as safely red places like Florida, Texas, even Kansas in some scenarios, you're starting to see people get restless.
So the coming years, 2025, 2026, could be pivotal.
Shaping up to be some of the most consequential midterms in modern history, according to this analysis. Because the election isn't going to be about slogans. It's going to be about whether people feel like their government is working for them, period.
So wrapping this all up, what does this mean for you listening to this deep dive? It really feels like we're at a crossroads, doesn't it?
It does, a significant point in time.
We've traced these interconnected threads. The perceived threats to democratic processes here and abroad, the really diverse and often powerful forms of resistance emerging, and how it all connects back to real-world impacts on everyday citizens, cost of living, community safety, international stability.
These themes are absolutely interwoven into our current moment. Understanding them isn't just academic, it feels crucial. Which brings us to the big question, really. The so what for you? If we are seeing these patterns, these authoritarian-like tendencies as described, this undermining of democratic norms, what is the role of informed citizenship in pushing back? What do you do with this understanding?
Yeah, how do you apply it? And maybe, here's a final thought to mull over. Could it be that the most powerful form of resistance or engagement isn't just about traditional protest?
What else?
Maybe it's also about seeing the connections we've talked about, really understanding the playbook, the tactics being used, and maybe even engaging with that sense of strategic humor we saw, or that unwavering clarity and principle from leaders like Zelensky or the European allies, something beyond just anger or despair.
Interesting thought. Resistance through understanding and strategic response.
Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this Steam Dive. We really hope it sparked some thoughts. We encourage you to keep reflecting, discuss these complex issues, and definitely explore them further on your own.